In the past, we've talked about identity solutions that utilize blockchain sort of like systems in order to get where they're going. One of the most interesting ones that's under development right now is called Project Keyhotee. And Daniel Larimer, CEO and founder of Invictus Innovations, joins us to talk again about Project Keyhotee and kind of what's happened since we last learned about that project. Daniel, thanks for joining us this morning.
Thank you for having me, Adam.
For those who didn't hear, I think it was episode
44, I believe,
of Let's Talk Bitcoin. Can you give us a brief overview of what Keyhotee is all about, what the point is?
Keyhotee combines your money, your identity, and your communication into a single application with the goal of providing a next generation internet that's secure.
So the last time we talked about how you could essentially mine for these names. It was a way to prevent people from just camping on names because you couldn't sell them, and there was this whole auction-based mechanism system set in place. So all of that is still that's still the plan, right?
What we have is a Keyhotee ID blockchain, and this is a blockchain for reserving usernames like email addresses. Allows you to communicate with other people. These names are mined into existence, and you build up investment points. The more you mine on your own name, the more investment point you get on your name. And this is used to prevent sock puppets for spam filtering, for prioritizing posts on forums, deciding whether or not to allow someone to create an account. Kind of like a way of filtering out risk accounts from real people. Because it takes a lot to invest in creating a name for yourself, there's a high price you have to pay to sacrifice your reputation just because you want to cheat someone out of $10 or something like that. So you want to keep these names around, and the more you invest into it, the more faith people have that you're not just going to throw your name away at the first opportunity.
So this is that problem again of verifiable identity, where you're trying to make it so the identity is verifiable, but it doesn't necessarily have to tie back one-to-one to your real life financial identity. This is and so you're able to maintain multiple identities with a system like this just as well as you are one, right?
Yes, you can create multiple identities. They could be anonymous or pseudo-anonymous, or they could be tied to your real world identity with services like VeriSign that will sign your identity and say, yes, you are indeed who you say you are. And the system will handle all of those things eventually. Initially, it's mainly for pseudonyms, though we have plans in the future to add support for tying it to your real world identity.
You had a kind of a public rollout and reveal of this project and a lot of the other projects that you're working on in Invictus at the Georgia conference at the beginning of October. What's gone on since then, and what are you working on now?
At the C3 conference, we started talking about releasing Keyhotee in November, starting mining for Bitshares in November as well. We spent the past month working toward those goals, and we've made great progress. The biggest announcement we have on the Keyhotee side of things, we're now taking pre-orders for names in the Genesis block of Keyhotee. And these names are names that last forever, and they'll be given an honored position. So anytime someone emails it or enters your name into Keyhotee, they'll show up in a special way. They're lifetime names. You never have to renew them. And we're adding as many other benefits as we can think of to these names, but they should have a lot of default trust because they'll be in the Genesis block. People will know that you didn't invest mining power, but you did provide some Bitcoin to help fund the development and promotion of Keyhotee.
So this is being done as a way to raise funds?
Yes. Invictus started to develop Bitshares primarily, and along the way we came up with the Keyhotee and the mail system. We're trying to raise funds to continue the development and enhancement of our decentralized communication platform. This is what we found to allow people to get involved, to have a name that if this takes off and goes where we hope it's going to go, it would be like having your name in the Genesis block of Bitcoin. You're famous.
What does it cost to have one of these early access names? They're not actually early access, you're reserving one, right?
Yes. So the benefits of reserving is that it's a highest bidder for the Genesis block, and they're more of a donation. So the more you donate, you get priority pick on which name you'd like.
How much does it cost to pre-order one of these names?
We are accepting pre-orders with our new cryptocurrency called Protoshares, and the minimum amount is 100 Protoshares to get a name. And these are something that you can mine with your CPU or buy them on our forums.
So what is a Protoshare? Because we've been talking about Bitshares to this point, and we've talked about the Keyhotee blockchain. I'm not familiar with what Protoshares is.
Protoshares is our way of doing an IPO for all of the different DACs that we're going to create here at Invictus. It is based on Bitcoin. It uses a new CPU-friendly proof of work. And for every Protoshare you acquire, we will honor that many shares in the new future DACs. So when Bitshares does come out, you'll get 1 Bitshare per Protoshare. When our other DACs come out, whether it's domain shares or other variants you can read about on our website, they will also honor your position in Protoshares. So Protoshares are our way of getting a stake in everything we are doing here at Invictus.
I know that you've been working on doing entirely new code for like the Keyhotee client and things like that. That's not based off of Bitcoin. Is this based off of Bitcoin?
Yes, this is directly based off of the most recent version of Bitcoin. We did that because it'd be faster. There's a long development time to do things new and clean. So we opted to just use the latest Bitcoin code base so that we could raise money, like you said, in a new decentralized way, help us vet our ideas and prove that there's interest.
So what exactly happens with the Protoshares? Do they eventually go away? I mean, what happens to them? Is this a short-term thing?
Protoshares mine out over 2 years. Most of the mining will be done within the first year because that's the big development phase when we're going to be building most of our software. But their long-term use is beyond that because we will be releasing variations on Bitshares for different exchanges, whether it's for a commodities exchange or a stock exchange. Protoshares will continue to be a way to speculate on the value of any future DAC that Invictus releases.
So you mentioned a forum. Where can people go to see that?
We've got a new forum at bitsharestalk.org. Replace Bitcoin with Bitshares, and it's just like Bitcoin Talk. You can visit our website at invictus-innovations.com. You can read all about it and the benefits of Keyhotee ID, where it's going to be used. And there's a form you can fill out that will allow you to provide the information, your email address, the name you'd like. A week or two, we'll be allowing the download of the Keyhotee client. You'll be able to use Keyhotee at that point in time in a manner very similar to BitMessage, where if you share your public key with someone, it will work. This is going to be our beta test period. During this time, you can get an idea of what Keyhotee is going to look like, what the ease of use is going to be like. Then on Christmas Eve, the pre-order period stops, and we launch the Genesis block of the Keyhotee ID system New Year's Eve with everyone's pre-ordered names in the Genesis block.
When you release the Keyhotee client next week, the test, is that going to be for everybody or is it just going to be for people who have reserved names?
It'll be for everyone.
Now, I know that you've raised funds in other ways. Is this partly fundraising and partly about sort of starting to get the word out about the system? Is that right?
Yes. There's actually 2 goals. We're trying to raise money, get revenue into the company so we can keep delivering on these amazing products. That's one aspect of it. The other aspect is we want people to find out about what we're doing, about our mission to make the internet secure and protected from the NSA spying, whether it's through your communications, your e-commerce. And Keyhotee is going to be the gateway. I've actually posted some YouTube videos that describe Keyhotee in great detail, how the current internet is insecure, where we need to go to actually secure the internet, and where Keyhotee fits into that. Keyhotee becomes almost the next generation web browser. And your Keyhotee ID replaces your email address and your online identity.
How does that work? I mean, we've talked about it. Keyhotee, in the context of BitMessage, there are a lot of similarities, but then you've added an additional layer on top of it with the name system and the direct connections. You know, again, for people who didn't catch that earlier episode, can you talk about what it is that you're actually trying to do, what the problem you're trying to solve is?
The primary problem we have is tying a name to a public key in a way that cannot be spoofed. Traditionally, the way this is done is you have certificate authorities like VeriSign that will sign the public key for your domain names that you're visiting. The problem is the NSA can force these companies to forge signatures. You can't really trust it. It's a centralized solution. So we've replaced the certificate authorities with a blockchain. The other way this is done is with PGP, where people send each other's keys and you kind of have a web of trust. But there's no real central server. You don't know where to go. No authority. What name is the actual name associated with the public key? So if someone gives you the wrong public key, you could end up sending your message to the wrong person. And with the Keyhotee ID blockchain, we solve that particular problem. The other problem we solve with the Keyhotee IDs is that it eliminates the need to use passwords to log into websites. Currently, when you log into anything, whether it's your bank or Let's Talk Bitcoin or Bitcoin Talk or any of these other websites, you send over a password. The website receives your password, and in theory, if you use that password anywhere else, they can steal your identity, which means you have to use a different password with every company you do business with. The other problem with using the password-based approach is that the SSL certificates that you use for sending over the connection is compromised. The NSA can get access to your password and have complete access to your online identity. The last problem we're solving is the fact that your email address is your identity right now. Anytime you need to reset your account information, you forget your password, they confirm it through your email and they allow you to reset it on your email. You don't own your email address. At any time, Google or Apple or Microsoft or Yahoo can come along and disable your account. They can send emails as you if they wish. So it's a system where you're allowing someone else to control your identity. Keyhotee IDs and our email system entirely replaces all the problems with a decentralized solution.
If the system that we're moving away from with certificate authorities is a few people making judgments, but there's a centralized list, so it's useful from that perspective. And the system that we, see with Web of Trusts is where there's really no central authority, and so there's no means of coordination. This is kind of like a hybrid approach where you take the consensus from the Web of Trust side, but you take the centralized sort of database structure from the centralized side. So you've got the centralized repository, but you don't have the arbitrary nature of the entity running it. Is that right?
You're correct. Just like Bitcoin, you reach consensus about what names belong to different public keys, and the cost of forging it is far too high to do so properly.
Now, Keyhotee is one element of this project that you're working on, but the other side of it is Bitshares, which is a very ambitious project that we've been talking about this concept of distributed autonomous corporations as opposed to talking about alternative cryptocurrencies. Can you talk a little bit about Bitshares and what you're trying to do with that?
I came up with the notion of a distributed autonomous corporation when I was trying to explain Bitshares. I think it'd be helpful to go through the analogy I used to describe Bitshares as a distributed autonomous corporation. A DAC, for short, is kind of like a company. It's got equity, it's got stock. You can trade the stock, and DACs pay dividends based on profits earned. But there's no centralized company that's actually backing it. It's not like stock for Apple in a blockchain. It's a business that has operating rules. It's performing a service and generating a profit. That's the concept of a DAC. So let's look at a decentralized bank and see if we can create a bank that doesn't have any corporation backing it, yet can do everything a traditional bank can do. When I go through this analogy, I think you will find it's amazingly straightforward how you can create dollars in a decentralized manner. Before talking about the cryptocurrency equivalent of a dollar, let's look at what a dollar actually is. What is it that we're trying to create? And how are dollars created today? When you go to the bank and you want to get a mortgage to buy a house, bank doesn't have a bunch of dollars sitting around that they then lend to you. They create new money out of thin air, backed by your promise to repay the bank. New dollars spring into existence when you borrow to buy a house. And your loan, of course, is collateralized by your house. And you have to have 20% down, or if the market's shaky like it is today, sometimes they require more, like 50% down. So the bank gets a promise from you to repay that's collateralized by something that's worth twice the value of your loan, and new dollars come into existence, and then you can go spend those dollars. Now, these dollars are an IOU from the bank, and people accept them at face value because they believe that the bank can honor the promise. So I want to go one step further, way back in time before we got onto this fictional reserve system, and look at the original banknotes. They were a promise to pay $1 worth of gold. But what is $1 worth of gold? $1 is defined as a fixed weight of silver. In our laws, it's still in the books today, dollar is defined as a weight of silver. The original banknotes were promised to pay $1 worth of gold, not silver. And there's a ratio between the gold and the silver. When you went to take out your mortgage, The bank created a new banknote that they called so many dollars. There was a promise to pay $1 worth of gold. So $1 is not some entry or something that the Federal Reserve has a monopoly over. They have a monopoly over Federal Reserve notes, but not necessarily over $1. $1 is more like a unit of value, and it's a promise to pay a unit of value. Any centralized bank could create a new dollar, assuming people trusted that the bank's note was as good as a Federal Reserve note. And you're going to get $1 per dollar. That's how centralized systems work. And I apologize if that was a very rough explanation. There's an article I'll be publishing that goes through it in much more detail if you like to follow the analogy closer. Let's look at how a decentralized bank can lend dollars into existence. The first thing that needs to happen is someone has to be willing to borrow the dollars from the bank. And in order to borrow the dollars, you need to post enough collateral to back the loan. In the case of Bitshares, it requires a 50% down payment or a 50% margin. If you want to borrow $100 from the Bitshares decentralized bank, you need to put $200 worth of bank equity, which is the cryptocurrency, held as collateral. Bitshares will then do a margin call anytime your collateral starts to become insufficient to secure the loan, at which point it will buy back the dollars that it lent into existence, pay off the loan, and destroy the dollars. This is the exact mechanism through which central banks create money by lending them into existence, and they destroy money when the loan is paid off. That, in a nutshell, is how a cryptocurrency can create dollars in the same way as a centralized bank.
Why would someone want to do this? Because it sounds like what you're saying is that in order to take a loan, I have to put more than I want to borrow on escrow at risk to collateralize that loan. So under what circumstances would I want to do this? What type of person would this be attractive to?
The reason people borrow stocks, people borrow stocks like Apple and Exxon, and they borrow it and they turn around and sell it. And this is called a short sell. And when you borrow it and then sell it, you can buy it back in the future for less money if the price goes down. And as a result, you make money. So speculators who want to speculate on the value of a Bitshare versus the dollar can short a dollar by borrowing it into existence and then selling the dollar they borrowed. They can sell it for Bitcoin, they could sell it for actual paper dollars, but either way they end up not having possession of the dollars. And in order to pay off the loan, they're going to have to buy them back at a future date. And hopefully, they're speculating, they'll be able to buy it back cheaper in the future and therefore make money.
Hi, listener. Here at Let's Talk Bitcoin, we're building a global network of correspondents able to contribute on-the-ground perspective when cryptocurrency-related information comes across their filters. If you'd like to join our global conversation, send an email with your name and geographic or cultural niche to apply@letstalkbitcoin.com. Just like Bitcoin, the only barrier to entry is your time and good work. Thanks for listening.